Oh, so you want women in your video games to be attractive? That must mean you want to masturbate to them. Hello again, this is Heretic Prince. And apparently, we've all been very naughty boys. You see, there's a bizarre argument that I see that keeps popping up over and over and over again. As video game developers are more and more pressured to avoid the male gaze. People telling the video game industry that video game characters should only appeal to them, not straight men, because that's evil. And when people notice, they're accused of wanting to pleasure themselves to their video game characters. This came to my attention because a YouTuber, Trey, had posted the ladies that are going to be in Spider-Man 2, and he feels that they are being unnecessarily covered up. Now, whether or not you agree with that assessment doesn't really matter. What I'm really focusing on here is the argument of if you want the ladies in your games to look like their comic book counterparts, it means that you want to stroke the meat stick. That's the argument I really want to focus on because it's bizarre to me. However, I will say this. If you were to tell me that up in the upper right, that's Black Cat, and in the lower left, that's Silver Sable, I never would have guessed it. I would have thought that Silver Sable here was actually White Queen's mom. That would have been my guess. However, let's go over this real quick. Trey said, and notice how most of the women look ugly as hell. Make that make sense, or they're covered up unnecessarily. Jesus Christ. And yes, they are covered up in comparison to their comic book counterparts. And the response to that, to what he said, is guys who jerk off to video games shouldn't be allowed near women. So what does this argument mean? What's being said, because Trey didn't mention anything about pleasuring himself. This tweet here brought it up, and this person isn't the only person I've seen do this. You see it all the time. So essentially, their argument is that the only reason for an attractive woman to exist in a video game is for the purpose of pleasing yourself, of physically pleasuring yourself. This person can't imagine an attractive woman being in a video game for any other purpose. Because, I better check here real quick. Okay, he, him. All right, we're safe. Because he immediately assumes that it's for the purpose of fapping. There's no other reason. There's no other reason for anything to be appealing to the eye than for the purpose of self-gratification. So what does that tell you about this person? Well, they can't see an attractive lady without going at it, which must be a weird way to live. No wonder they're so obsessed with incels, because that's the only way I can imagine someone playing a video game and being so distracted by the fact that there's an attractive lady on the screen that they have to hold the controller with one hand. To come to the assumption that the only reason that something appealing to the eye can exist is for self-pleasure. And whenever I say self-pleasure, I don't mean pleasing to the eye, I mean pleasing thine self, if I'm not making that clear. So essentially, what I gather from this is that people like this demand that women in video games be fully covered up and be made ugly so that they can restrain themselves because they have no self-control. You see, if you're not an incel, you've been around the block a couple times, you've actually touched a woman, it takes a little bit more than a little pixelated side boob to get your motor running. I mean, how did they get through everyday life? If they see a woman out on the street who's attractive, who's wearing a skirt, maybe a low top, they think, it's time, and start just pulling their butt. They think that that's that's the only conclusion I can come to, because the immediate assumption is that an attractive lady can only exist for the purposes of pleasing yourself. Because Trey didn't say that. I know I'm repeating myself, but I feel like I have to pound that point in, so to speak. However, in reality, what this is an attempt to shame somebody off of pointing out the woke religion's offensive maneuver here. Of course, as I showed you before with the whole male gaze thing, is that they're truly pushing that only their sexuality should be able to be enjoyed. But of course, I'm being silly, right? No, they want to remove sexuality from video games. Or not sexuality, but sexualization, right? Take, for example, like Mortal Kombat 11, where they made strides to try to remove sexualization by covering up the ladies a bit more. They're there to fight. They're not there to look good for the men, right? I almost said for the women. Case in point, look at the men in Mortal Kombat 11 and how covered up they are. Yeah. Okay, I guess that's not a good point to go on. Okay, that was just one game. It doesn't prove like an agenda's going on, right? Wrong. Look at Mass Effect Andromeda. In that game, you could choose whether you want your main character to be a male or a female. Or as these people would tell us, body type 1, body type B, or what have you. If you look at the male character you can choose, he's a handsome man. Damn good looking. But then you look at the female model. She looks like she took a 3-story dive and broke the fall with her face. How did they mess up that bad? People can scream that they had graphical issues all day long, but they certainly didn't with the male character. Why is that? The actress who they modeled for the female character, she's a good-looking lady. What happened? I tell you what happened. They caved. So why is that? Why is it okay for the male characters to be sexy as hell, but for the women characters, we got to bring that to an end? You see, it's not enough that other things be accepted, because once they're accepted, they got to keep on chugging forward. And now the statistical average, most people are straight, believe it or not, despite what Hollywood would tell you. That has to be shunned. We have to end that. We need an enemy to fight, and that is those horrible men who like attractive ladies. Well, as I've been explaining, it's once again a sword masquerading as a shield. Again, we must make sure that these women are covered up and protected from the male gaze. That can't be accepted. It cannot be tolerated. We cannot allow straight men to find women attractive. That's horrible and evil and needs to be brought to an end. But whenever it comes to what they're attracted to, I bring you to Polygon article. Disney's hottest animated animal characters ranked. Oh yeah. Yeah. Now, I can't say anything. Right? I have to accept this. Hey, if you want sexy animals, I guess I can't say anything. Right? Let's see. Where did the rankings go? Bernard from The Rescuers. Oh, look at this sexy hunk. Oh, the tramp from Lady and the Tramp. He's not even anthropomorphized. I can't say that word. I'm not going to sit here and try because this is absurd. He's a full-on dog. Oh, but that's what we need. Give us that sexy goodness. Oh, they need this. They need this. Oh, God. Oh, who's number one? I can't wait to see it. Oh, Miss Bianca, 16. You got robbed, girl. Dodger? Oh, yes. Look at this hunk of a man, frog. Oh, Hot Tiger from Zootopia. You get the point. But now we're going to be curious, right? So let's go ahead and get to number one. Let's get to number one. Robin Hood. Robin Hood. At least he's somewhat in a male figure, right? Oh, but we have to understand and accept that. We have to. While they straight up call them hot. And that's not to mention, once again, all the hot male characters that are out there for everybody to enjoy.
No, HP, that's male power fantasy.
They're not mutually exclusive. If you want to imply that women are attracted to a man's power rather than who he is, that's on you. Not to mention being attractive is power. But no, what we want has to be reined in. We have to have Dove tell us men who find women attractive, we have to be dictated to as to what's attractive and what's not. Oh no, we don't get to decide that. They get to decide that. So then I have to ask, okay, well, if we look at Black Cat and Silver Sable from the comics and we find that attractive, right? And that's no, we got to cover that up. But then you're going to tell us that we have to like Dove Lady. Well, what happens if we start finding her sexy? Are you going to lock her away too? Or is it going to be okay then? Is it going to be okay because that's what we should be attracted to? I'm genuinely curious. If any wokies have made it this far, please answer me. When I find Dove Lady attractive, is that going to be locked away because it's too sexualized? Or are you going to give me the thumbs up? Is that going to be okay? Am I fine to do that? Or do I need to find animals sexy? Please let me know. So back to the original argument. You just want to jerk off. Well, if you're so concerned about watching me jerk off, you should subscribe to my OnlyFans. Again, it's just these soy sexuals having no ability to control themselves, because again, they assume that the only reason an attractive lady would ever exist in a video game is for their own self-gratification. It must be what they immediately do because that's what they assume everybody else does. Well, I'm sorry, pal, that you can't control yourself. I'm sorry you haven't learned restraint. This is something that you need to speak to your father about, or a male figure in your family. It's like Mark Twain said, censorship is telling a man he can't have a steak just because a baby can't chew. I'm very sorry that you can't chew, but I'm going to enjoy my steak. What Trey is doing here is assessing a product as to whether or not he's going to buy it or not. And if somebody who's going to buy a product, if a corporation is going to ask me to buy a product, that product should be made to appeal to me. Now, I'm not saying it has to appeal to only me. No, that's what woke people do. Woke people get upset whenever a game appeals to them, but there's also elements that might appeal to a straight man. Heaven forbid. Whenever a corporation wants me to buy a product and then they put things out there that show that they are almost antagonistic to what I want. They want to tell me, oh no, you don't get to enjoy your male gaze. Well, I'm not going to give you my money. That's just simple economics. That's simple marketing. That's marketing 101. You can make things appealing to a lot of different people, but if you go out of your way to show, hey, see, we're not going to let men enjoy their quote-unquote scantily clad women. If you're honestly going to be that antagonistic, I'm not going to buy your product. If you're going to give in to people who don't buy your product anyway, they just want to flex their power over you, well then, good luck. And it's not even a moral move or a belief move or a political move. It's just, hey, if you don't want me buying your product, then I'm not going to buy it. And the way that you express whether or not you want me to buy your product is whether you allow it to appeal to me or not. It's really very simple. Okay, to summarize, I might not exactly agree with Trey's assessment here. I think the ladies are cute. However, I can understand the suspicion of them being covered up to cave into a certain religion out there putting pressure on the game industry. And my main point is that whenever people say that, oh, it must be because you want to fat to it, it's because they don't understand how to look at something that they like or they find visually appealing without doing the deed, because they have no self-restraint, because they're soy sexuals who just can't appreciate, quite frankly, how beautiful women are. As always, thank you very much for listening and letting me share my thoughts with you.